And just like that, guys, we're back with the preseason series you guys love. Will my fave make roster? Hi, if you're new here, my name is Justice, giving you all my verdicts and views about women's basketball. And today we are kicking off our 15-team series with the Seattle Storm. Now, Seattle fans, I've been telling people to check on y'all. How are you guys doing? Over there in Seattle, there has been a lot of change. They brought in a new coach after they parted ways with Noel Quinn last year, and they had, honestly, a choice. You know, were they going to be able to retain their roster, you know, their vets? And yeah, the answer thus far has been no. There's going to be a completely different team over there in Seattle this season. But all that means is that there's a lot of opportunity. When I look at the roster, when I look at the camp invites, when I look at what pieces Seattle has right now, nobody has been a core piece, played a focal point in the offense in that retrospect. They have nobody like that in Seattle right now. So all that means is there is an opportunity for somebody else to take shape in that form in Seattle. But when we look at the numbers, we do have to ask ourselves, will our fave make roster? And although there is a lot of opportunity in the camp, there is limited spots available as always. So let's figure out who's coming to camp. So let's start off first with our protected contracts. So starting off, we have Ezzy. Ezzy is probably the biggest piece that Seattle is getting back in terms of role, responsibility. But then we also have Natisha Heidemann, Stephanie Dolson, Jade Melbourne, Katie Lou Samuelson, and Lexi Brown. So we have 6 players who are currently on a protected contract. Remember, protected contract means these people will most likely be on the final roster when everything is said and done, because these are guaranteed contracts. Seattle will have to pay them if they waive them. Now, I'm also going to throw in Dom Malonga and Jordan Horston into this conversation. They are not on veteran protected contracts. They're on rookie scale contracts, but the Seattle Storm is not going to be cutting those players as well. So we have right now 8 players that you can for sure guarantee that they will be on the Seattle Storm's final roster when everything is said and done. So let's talk about draft night real quickly. On draft night, the Seattle Storm had the 3rd pick where they picked up Awa Pham. And then they also had the 16th pick in the 2nd round, but they end up trading that pick with the Valkyries for Flau'jae Johnson. So they ultimately end up having the 8th pick. So they had the 1st and the 8th pick in the 1st round. Then with the 14th pick, they're going to select Taina Mayer from Duke. Then they had the 39th pick where they selected Grace Van Sluten. Now, as far as training camp contracts, the Seattle Storm have given out 7 of those. So starting off, you have Zaya Cook and Mackenzie Holmes. Zaya and Mackenzie both are returners from the Seattle Storm. They were with them last year. Now, they did waive both of these players in the midst of last year, but they end up, I think, re-signing both of them as the season progressed. And those are the only returners that they gave training camp contracts to. Everybody else, this will be their first time at a Seattle camp. You're going to have Jaylen Brown, Elle Ladine, Patrice Montpere, who is a rookie. Jaylen Brown is also a rookie. And then lastly, you're going to have Renaya Davis, who was extended a training camp contract. So let's just look at our numbers. So like I said, off rip, 6 protected contracts that, again, signed, sold, delivered, they will be there. 2 more added in when you have Dom Malonga and Jordan Horston. Then we're going to throw 2 more in, which is going to be Awa Pham and Flau'jae Johnson. Yes, Awa's 19 and young, the whole 9, but I think they want to give Awa experience, like kind of throw her into the wolves, kind of what they did with Dom too. So I would think 2 of those spots would be going to Awa Pham and Flau'jae Johnson. So that's going to bring our total number to 10. So left, we got 2 roster spots and 2 developmental spots. So now we're ready to kind of address the golden question of, will my fave make roster? And depending on who your fave is, I think there's levels to this, right? Obviously, we have our locked, we have our outside looking in. I got a category called in the front yard, and then uphill battle. Outside looking in means there's a good chance that they'll end up putting you on roster. You got a better kind of leverage. In the front yard means you're probably going to be one of the toughest cuts, as in maybe you're not on their radar right now, but I think you can make some noise in training camp. And then uphill battle means just initially that. It's going to be an uphill battle. The numbers aren't essentially on your side. So on the outside the door category, I would throw Zaya, Mackenzie, and Jaylen Brown in that conversation. Like I said before, Mackenzie and Zaya aren't new to the organization. They brought them back last year. Depending on growth and development, I think can come and make an impact. When we look at the point guard position right now, on protected contracts, they have Jay Melbourne, Natisha Heidemann. So I do think that Zaya has a good chance of being another point guard that they add in. Of course, she will be battling with Taina Mayer, but with Taina being a rookie, there's a good chance they move her into one of those developmental spots. And if they go ahead and choose to do that, I do think Zaya Cook has a good chance of making final roster. So that's going to bring my number to 11. Now, then I have in the conversation Mackenzie Holmes and also Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown has shown herself to be a solid shooter. When I look at what the Seattle Storm currently has and maybe areas that I think they could use some improvement, right now Lexi Brown is one of their best shooters along with Steph Dolson. If she has a good training camp where she's able to establish herself as a knockdown shooter, I think she has a good chance of making final roster. And then Mackenzie Holmes. Now, they're a little deep in that 4 position. They got Ezzy Awa and Katie Lou Samuelson. And then at the 5 position, they got Steph Dolson and Dom Malonga. So I think Mackenzie might have it difficult in making that final spot, but I do think she potentially can get that developmental spot. So I don't think Mackenzie makes the active roster, but I do think she has the opportunity to snag one of those developmental spots along with Taina Mayer. In the front yard is going to be Renaya Davis. Now, Renaya is not new to this. She has been and made, different teams, been invited to different training camps. I think right now she is just trying to make a final roster, essentially. Has been given opportunities, just hasn't been able to kind of seal the deal. But over in Turkey, she has been hooping this season. She's averaging 20.5 points per game. So has established herself as someone who can get a bucket, which is something that the Seattle Storm probably is looking for, essentially. Now, with that being said, she's going to have to take that spot from someone. And I think her biggest comp to get that spot is probably going to be Jaylen Brown. But here's the interesting thing when we look at who's invited to camp. Everybody, honestly, can be going after one of those developmental spots for real, for real. Jaylen Brown has 2 years of service. Renaya Davis has 1 year of service. So when we look at the numbers and then you add in everybody else who's on a rookie scale contract, yeah, those developmental spots are up for grabs. Then as far as our players who have an uphill battle, I think it's going to be Beatrice, Grace, Elle, and Jalen. Third rounders have a 5% chance of making final day roster. Like I said, WNBA roster is the hardest to make, easily put. So for Grace, she does have the hardest challenge right now. As well for Beatrice, she also, as well as Grace, because they're both post players, are battling for kind of that post player developmental spot. As for Jalen and Elle, they probably are trying to grab a developmental spot from Taina Mayer. Now, they all don't play the same position. Taina was not a lottery pick, so her contract isn't guaranteed. They can waive her if they want. But I think that their best chance of getting on roster is going to be through that developmental spot. And again, it's just going to be an uphill battle, honestly, just because of, again, they burned the 14th pick on Taina, so they probably see some investment in that conversation. But anything can happen. I'm just communicating who they need to be looking at when they line up on the line and they need to take a spot from somebody. So, will my fave make roster? There is, I can bet my bottom dollar about 10 players who will be on active rosters when everything's said and done. I have my idea about the 2 developmental spots where I think it's going to be Taina and Mackenzie Holmes. And then, as for everybody else, it is going, in my opinion, to be an uphill battle. Like I said, anything can happen. I'm just communicating who you need to have your eyes on if you're going after one of these spots and kind of what it's looking like in terms of the camp at large. Like I said, Seattle has a lot of opportunity. When you have a team that hasn't done anything and you have a lot of pieces that essentially on the other teams have been role players or come off the bench and haven't been a focal point of an offense, that just means there's an opportunity to perform. So not counting anybody out, not saying anybody can't do it, just being transparent about what the play looks like currently.